you will probably notice lots and lots of different trees. Many of these are not only just serving as a food source, but also remember as a homing. So if it's a bird, it's up in a tree. If it's an animal that is a cavity nester, like our flying squirrels and raccoons, they may be in the stems. But they are also using it for cover when they are doing their hunting. So you might want to learn about some of these and which one of them might serve as a food source. To do that, we need to be able to do some basic plant identification. And when you're trying to learn these, let's start looking at the leaves. So if you use reference material, it will say certain words, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a vocabulary, okay? So when we start talking about a leaf, okay, here's some pretty simple leaves. This is a simple leaf in that it doesn't have any change along the sides, okay? We have the tip, the base, and the margin. And those are the words that you will want to learn some specific names for because they have lots of them. There is a botanical handbook that will certainly help you with that. But if it is one leaf, okay, that whole blade there is attached to the stem, that is one simple leaf. And they may look like this. They may not all be this size, however, because this is a sourwood, by the way, okay? And you could know that by actually chewing on the leaf. And you may have a fruity, soury type taste to it. That's a pretty cool one to see, and beautiful fall color. But that leaf doesn't have to be that big. This is also a simple leaf. We have a much smaller size leaf, but I have a petiole, a base, a margin, and a tip attached to that stem. This is Chickasaw plum, and it is one of our natives that will produce a food crop, actual fruit for many of the animals that like to eat the fruit. So a lot of our omnivores or even some of our herbivores. Persimmon, what do you think? Simple leaf, right? Okay. There it is, petiole, base, tip, margin. But you start noticing color. So that is one way you can learn these, is if a textbook says the petiole, this down here, is a certain color, then you will be able to learn to identify it. Also, look behind that petiole. What do you see? That's a bud. Where that bud is coming out from the stem, from that point forward, everything is a leaf. That's how you can learn about how much of that plant is a leaf. So find the bud, see what the shape is. This one's persimmon, by the way. And again, another fruit that is commonly eaten by wildlife. If you're real hungry, you can eat it too, but boy, it's going to dry out your mouth. So leave it to the possums for the most part. But what about something like this? Okay, what do you think? All right, right there I've got a bud coming off the stem, so I know from here forward it's a leaf. This is one leaf. There's only one petiole. Does that look anything like the last ones? No, because this is a different leaf shape. Instead of being simple like that, this one actually is a palmately, like your fingers, palmately shaped leaf. And so now we start talking about lobes, this part out here, and sinuses, the space in between. So this thing that kind of looks star-shaped, all right, it's got 5 lobes and 4 deep sinuses, meaning they go almost back to the middle of the leaf again. This is sweet gum. Okay? This one will produce those large burrs with lots of seed in them. Makes an excellent mast food crop. So what do you think? All right, here's my stem. I go on down. I find out where there's a bud. There's my bud right in there starting to come out. My petiole, also a red petiole. But this leaf is now palmately shaped. Not simple and round like that, but palmately. But it only has 3 lobes and 2 shallow sinuses. That's the way you'll see the words in the books. This is red maple. Okay, but these are all simple individual leaves. What about a compound leaf? That's the next thing you need to figure out. So when you see something, all right, what were we going to look for? We're going to look for a bud. There's my bud just getting formed. And so I know from the stem outward where that bud is, this whole section is one leaf. So if I'm looking at one leaf, I got to count all those parts. Well, this is a compound leaf. This is on sumac. And you can look to see, is there a leaf at the very end, a terminal or not? And this one does not. The leaflets are opposite each other, and this running down the middle is a rachis. The only part that's a petiole, that little piece right there. The rest of it's a rachis. So I know this is a compound leaf. That's sumac. All right, this is hickory. There's my bud. So this whole portion is one leaf. This one now does have a terminal lobe and then 4 other leaflets. That's how you would learn to recognize hickory. Okay? What about something like this? Wow. That's huge. You know where the bud is? This actually was growing this way, and the bud's way back here on the stem. This is one leaf. But now my rachis also has separate leaflets on it. So when we refer to this one, it is pinnate, which means feather-like, but this one is actually bipinnate. It branches twice. Comes off the main stem, and then there's leaflets off of each of those separate stems. But remember, you start with, where's the node? Where is it attached to the stem? Okay? And you can learn. This one is devil's walking stick. It's a type of Aurelia. You see where it gets its name with all those thorns on there? Pretty intense thorns. You should see the stem. They're much bigger even. So when you're learning the leaflets, we want to start as a simple leaf or a compound leaf. And then what's the shape of it? Does it have lobes and sinuses or not? And does it branch again? So is it just pinnate or bipinnate with or without a terminal bud? Well, that's just the leaves. How about the attachment to the stem? That can be opposite, alternate, or whorled. Make your life easy. Learn the opposite ones. Okay? A, Aurelia. A, ash. Okay? A lot of them that start with A's are also opposites. Okay? M's. How about maples? All right? See the branch from the tree? Opposite branching. And then, when I get into my leaves, let's get it all the way up to the tip here. Back side, there you go. Opposite leaf attachment also. The leaves are across from each other. The stems are across from each other. See if we can get some of them out there. Opposite attachment. And you know the other one, we don't have one today, is dogwood. So if you can remember MAD, maple, ash, dogwood, or maple, Aurelia, dogwood. If you can remember the MAD, you will have a lot of them. that are opposite leaf arrangement. Everything else is going to be alternate, which means there's a stair-stepping effect. Here, space, here, space. They're not paired up across from each other. That's what we mean by alternate. So that'll help you learn to identify based on the information that you're given in textbooks. So let's look at some of these other species that we've got here. Here we have 3 different types of blueberries. Vaccinium, that's the genus, that's the grouping that they're in. They all produce little blueberries. So you'll see them on all of these plants. Excellent food for small mammals and birds. So finding blueberries means you've got a really good habitat for animals. And these are the 3 most common that you'll probably come across. Elliott's blueberry, small leaf, tiny fruit, green stems. It's pretty easy to pick out. It's a lighter shade of green and it's got green stems. The sparkleberry, this one actually will become tree size, but it's sparkly. It's almost shiny on these leaves. It's got beautiful red wood and it grows in a twisted habit. So you might come across that one. And then deerberry. The leaves are furry, as if you could pet the deer. Additionally, if you were to see these flowers, the stamens, the stems that stick out beyond the petals, as if a deer was sticking his tongue out at you. All right, so you can pick out the deer berries also. These 3 are very common as a food source. Well, then that brings us to the oaks. When you start talking about acorns, that mast that the individual birds and animals, deer in particular, would like to eat over the winter months or cache them, stash them away like the squirrels do for next year, oaks become a big part of the animal's habitat. So we need to learn oaks. Well, there's quite a few, but some of them that are most common we've got here. Well, let's start with classifying them in 2 groups, because we have the red oaks and the white oaks. And that's a grouping based on their growth habits. So you will have your white oaks. These are the ones that produce large amounts of fruit with lots of nutrients to them, but not every year, every other year. So you can go through cycles and you can have greater food availability on the years in which those trees are shedding all of their acorns. Keep in mind, not every tree came into this world at the same time. So that individual tree has better production every other year, but that doesn't mean you won't have acorns every year because it may be coming from another tree. Now, how do I pick out that white oak group? Well, you guys have learned these words already, right? Okay. Simple leaves. This one does not have any lobes or sinuses. This one does have the lobes and sinuses, okay? So we can start looking for those kind of shapes. This one here, when you look at each of these lobes, you will notice they are rounded. And there is not a spine, a little thorn look on the end of those. And these 2, of course, they are round, okay? And they don't have the spines on them. Okay, rounded leaf, no spine on the end. And look at this one, rounded leaf, no spine on the end. Okay. If you touch these leaves, you will notice that it's revolute, it's cupped downward, and there's a hard margin on the edge. Well, these are both a live oak, which is in the white oak group. Okay. This is true white oak, not only its group, but its species. This is live oak. It's in the white oak group, but the species is actually live oak. And we won't know till we have acorns on these, but it's pretty typical that your standard Virginiana, your big, majestic live oak, is going to have leaves more of this size, where our sand live oak, the Geminata, Gemini, twins, 2 acorns, that's where it gets its name, is going to be much more cupped, much smaller. And we can confirm that once we have acorns. But realize these are the live oaks that are going to have really good food sources, long living trees, but those acorns are on a 2-year cycle. Versus these others. Well, this one's pretty easy, right? Okay, I know that I have lots of lobes, deep sinuses, and there's the spines. I know it's in the red oak group because of those spines. But also, do you see the shape of that leaf? What do you think? You ever seen an animal that kind of leaves a track like that? Long center and then off to the side? That is a turkey oak. It gets its name because it looks similar to a turkey track. But it's in the red oak group. This is a scrubby tree. It is one that keeps all of its leaves all winter long, even though they're dead. It's meant to drop its leaves, but it will not drop them until the new buds push them off. So if you're out there in the fall season and you see a tree that looks like it's got all dead leaves on it and you think it's gone, it's not gone. It's just waiting for new leaves to push it off. But turkey oak is a good source for those acorns. What about this one? This one's a little more rounded. It kind of looks a little bit like a paddle or a spatula. You're going to have to look really close. See that tiny little spine? But it does have a spine. So we know again that this is in the red oak group. So we're going to get acorns every year, just not as nutritional and as tasty. But it's a good massed crop every single year. That's water oak, true water oak. Well, what about this one that kind of looked like the live oak? But what do I have on that rounded leaf? All of a sudden I've got a few little spines. Look at that, there's a little tip on the end. Otherwise, that might look like a live oak, but it's got a spine. There's no hard edge, no revolute turned leaf to it. This one is laurel oak. And so every year, again, I'm going to get a large mass crop of acorns for a food source, but it's not going to be their favorites. They're going to prefer the live oaks. So learning to identify those trees, where they're at, they do have different habitats. You may need to learn some of the terminology to identify it, but you can certainly find a tree that will establish a habitat. And if you're looking for somewhere to take pictures or hunt, putting yourself in the spot where you know there's good food sources and habitats for a certain animal means you need to know some of the plants they like. And these are just a few of the trees you might find.